The Forgotten Protocol. The Celestial Alliance War Council erupted in laughter. Admiral Thrix, his translucent blue skin rippling with amusement, waved a tentacled appendage at the holographic display showing human defense patterns. They established perimeters as if physical space still matters in modern warfare. He gurgled through his atmospheric converter. Primitives clinging to outdated tactics. General Carvex, the Alliance's most decorated field commander, didn't join the mockery. The scaled veteran had faced humans before. "Don't underestimate them," he warned, voice like gravel through a synthesizer. "They adapt quickly." "They're outnumbered 10,000 to 1, Admiral Thrix countered, dismissing the concern with a flick of his tendrils. "Their last significant outpost at Proxima Station falls today. We've broken through their encryption. Their communications are ours to monitor. Victory is assured." On the holographic display, the massive Alliance armada approached the modest human installation orbiting a dwarf star at the edge of contested space. Unremarkable except for one detail, it was the gateway to Earth's solar system. Commander Ilara Chen stood at the command center of Proxima Station, watching the approaching Alliance fleet through reinforced viewports. Unlike the sprawling organic vessels of the Alliance, with their coral-like structures and bioluminescent propulsion systems, human ships were angular, utilitarian, and, most importantly, few in number. "They've breached the Mendoza Protocol," her XO reported grimly, looking up from a console awash in warning lights. "Our communications are compromised." Chen nodded, her weathered face revealing nothing. 20 years in Earth's defense forces had taught her to keep fear locked away. "How long until they're in firing range?" 30 minutes, Commander." She turned to face her crew, 12 men and women operating a station designed for 100. Budget cuts, resource shortages, the usual excuses from Earth Command. The reality was simpler. Humanity was losing this war. "Begin evacuation procedures for non-essential personnel," she ordered. "And initiate the Lazarus contingency." Her XO paled. "Commander, that protocol hasn't been used since the Battle of Titan, I know." Chen's dark eyes reflected the distant glow of the approaching fleet. "But we're out of options. Send the encoded burst to Earth Command, then scrub all references from our systems." As the crew scrambled to execute her orders, Chen accessed a secure terminal, fingers flying across the haptic interface. The screen prompted for voice print authorization. "Commander Ilara Chen, Earth Defense Force. Authorization. Umbra Rising." The system blinked green, then displayed a simple message. "Protocol initiated. 47 minutes to activation." Chen allowed herself a grim smile. They might not survive to see it, but the Alliance was about to learn why humans were still fighting a war they should have lost years ago. Carvex watched from the command deck of the Alliance flagship Inevitable Dominance as the first volley of quantum torpedoes streaked toward the human station. Brilliant flashes erupted as the station's shields absorbed the initial impacts. "Their defenses are stronger than anticipated," his tactical officer noted with surprise. "Humans always hold something in reserve," Carvex replied. "Continue the assault." The battle unfolded with mechanical precision. The human defenders fought valiantly, even managed to destroy 3 Alliance cruisers with cunningly placed mines, but the outcome was never in doubt. Within 40 minutes, Proxima Station's outer defenses had collapsed. "Boarding parties have breached the main airlock," the tactical officer reported. "Minimal resistance encountered." Carvex frowned. "Too easy. Have they initiated self-destruct procedures?" "Negative, General. Their reactor remains stable." "Find their command center. I want their commanding officer alive." Commander Chen heard the Alliance forces before she saw them. The distinctive chittering of Phasian shock troops mixed with the heavy tread of Krull warriors. Her remaining crew stood at their stations, sidearms drawn. "It's been an honor serving with you all," she said quietly, checking the time display on her personal device. 7 minutes remaining. The blast doors to the command center buckled under concentrated fire, then collapsed inward with a shriek of tortured metal. Shock troops poured through the opening, insectoid bodies moving with unsettling speed. "Hold your fire," Chen commanded her crew. "We surrender." The Alliance forces hesitated, clearly surprised by the lack of resistance. Then a towering figure stepped through the ruined doorway, a Krull warrior in ornate battle armor, scales gleaming under the emergency lighting. "Commander Chen," General Carvex rumbled. "Your reputation precedes you." Chen met his gaze without flinching. "As does yours, General. I believe this concludes today's hostilities." Carvex studied her with compound eyes that reflected the room in fractured images. "You surrendered too easily." "Why?" "Because I recognize a lost cause when I see one," she replied. "No sense in needless bloodshed." The general signaled to his troops, who began securing the human crew. "Search their databases," he ordered. "I want all intelligence on Earth's remaining defenses." A Phasian technician skittered to the main console, appendages working rapidly. "General, their systems have been purged. No tactical data remaining." "Standard procedure," Chen said with a shrug. "You'd have done the same." Carvex approached her slowly, looming over her human frame. "What are you hiding, Commander?" Before she could answer, a junior officer called out, "General, we found something unusual in their archival systems." On the main view screen appeared ancient schematics, designs for something the Alliance had never encountered before. The files were incomplete, heavily redacted, but what remained was disturbing enough. "Project Umbra," the officer translated. "Some kind of human defense initiative from before the war. Reference to something called void technology." "Just old research files," Chen said casually. "Failed experiments from when we still thought we could match your technological superiority." Carvex wasn't convinced. "Bring her," he ordered, turning to leave. "The Admiral will want to question her personally." As Alliance troops secured her wrists with energy binders, Chen glanced at her personal device one last time. 0:47, 0:46. "You should have studied our history more carefully, General," she said as they led her away. "Humans have always been good at one thing, surviving against impossible odds." Aboard the inevitable Dominance, Admiral Thrix reveled in their victory. Proxima Station was secured, its defenders captured, and the path to Earth's solar system now lay open. The War Council had reconvened, this time to plan the final assault on humanity's homeworld. "The prisoners have been processed?" Thrix asked, floating in his suspension tank at the center of the council chamber. "All except the commander," Carvex reported. "She's being prepared for interrogation. We found references to something called Project Umbra in their archives." Thrix dismissed the information with a flick of his tendrils. "More human deception. Their propensity for creating elaborate myths about secret weapons and hidden advantages is well documented. Remember their so-called ghost fleet that never materialized?" "This seems different," Carvex insisted. The files were heavily encrypted, buried under layers of irrelevant data. If it were propaganda, why hide it so thoroughly? Before the Admiral could respond, the ship's emergency klaxons blared. The lighting shifted to a pulsing red. "What's happening?" Thrix demanded. The tactical officer's voice came through the communication system, strained and confused. "Sir, we're detecting anomalies throughout the fleet. Ships are reporting sensor ghosts, communications disruptions, and, sir, the unyielding fury has gone silent." On the holographic display, one of the Alliance cruisers winked out of existence. Not destroyed, simply gone, as if it had never been there. "Impossible," Thrix gurgled. "Get me visual confirmation." The display shifted to show the space where the cruiser should have been. Empty void greeted them, until something moved within that darkness, something that shouldn't exist. General Carvex turned to the guards at the chamber entrance. "Bring Commander Chen here." Now, when they returned with the human officer minutes later, 3 more Alliance vessels had vanished. Chen's expression remained impassive, but her eyes gleamed with something dangerous. Knowledge, or perhaps satisfaction. "What have you done?" Carvex demanded. Chen glanced at the display, then at the chronometer on the wall. "I told you to study our history, General. You'd have learned that humans don't believe in fair fights." She nodded toward the viewports, where the distant stars were now being occluded by something. "You're about to meet Project Umbra. I suggest you prepare your evacuation protocols." As if on cue, the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated. The lights flickered, and through the comms came sounds no Alliance crew member had ever heard before, a rhythmic pulsing, like a heartbeat from the void itself. They said it was just a legend. Chen continued, her voice steady as chaos erupted around them. "A defensive measure so terrible we locked it away, hoping never to use it. But you pushed us too far." Admiral Thrix's tank vibrated with the strange pulsations. "What is it?" he demanded, his confidence finally cracking. Commander Chen smiled, not the smile of a defeated enemy, but of a predator who had successfully lured prey into a trap. "The void answers to those who know how to call it, Admiral. And humans, we've been whispering to the darkness for centuries." Outside the viewports, the stars continued to vanish, one by one. What lurks in the void? In the classified archives of Earth Command, Project Umbra had been referenced only in whispers. The official documentation claimed it was abandoned a decade before the Alliance War began. Deemed too dangerous, too unpredictable, a violation of natural law. The few who knew the truth understood it wasn't abandoned, merely hidden. Not a weapon to be deployed lightly, but a last resort when extinction loomed. Project Umbra began with a simple question. What exists in the spaces between stars? Not merely vacuum, as science had long assumed, but something else, something that responded to certain frequencies, certain patterns of energy. Humans, with their reckless curiosity, had found a way to communicate with it, then to wake it, and finally, to direct it. The inevitable dominance shuddered as another anomaly swept through its lower decks. Alliance crew members reported impossible things. Corridors that stretched endlessly, rooms that hadn't existed before, shadows that moved against the light. 3 more ships had vanished from the fleet in the past hour. Commander Chen sat calmly in the council chamber, still bound but radiating a quiet confidence that unnerved her captors. General Carvex paced before her, his scaled hide rippling with agitation. "You will explain this phenomenon," he demanded. "Now." "I don't think I will," Chen replied, watching as the lights flickered again. "You wouldn't believe me anyway. You've spent years convincing yourselves that humans are technologically inferior, strategically naive. It made it easier to justify this war." Admiral Thrix's tank bubbled furiously. "Your deception will not save your species. Whatever trick you've employed, we will overcome it." Chen laughed, a genuine sound that echoed strangely in the chamber. "This isn't a trick, Admiral. This is humanity acknowledging what the universe has always known. There are spaces between spaces, gaps in reality where other rules apply. We just learned how to reach through them." A junior officer burst into the chamber, carapace gleaming with moisture that might have been sweat if the species were capable of it. "Admiral, General, multiple breaches reported throughout the fleet. The darkness is inside our ships now." Carvex's compound eyes fixed on Chen. "Release her restraints." "General," Thrix protested. "If she dies, we lose any chance of understanding what's happening." Carvex growled. "Do it." As the energy binders deactivated, Chen rubbed her wrists and stood, stretching casually. "Wise decision. You might survive this after all." "Take us to the observation deck," Carvex ordered. "I want to see what's happening to my fleet." The observation deck offered a panoramic view of the surrounding space, and the nightmare unfolding within it. Where once had been ordered formations of Alliance vessels, now existed chaos. Ships drifted aimlessly, some dark and powerless, others moving in erratic patterns as if piloted by madmen. And between them, by the ancestral seas, one of the officers whispered. The void between the ships wasn't empty anymore. Darkness moved within darkness, shapes with geometries that hurt the eye to follow, tendrils of absolute nothingness that reached out to caress Alliance hulls. Where they touched, matter simply ceased to be, leaving behind perfectly smooth edges as if pieces of reality had been surgically removed. "What are we seeing?" Carvex asked, his voice hushed. "We call them void entities," Chen explained, approaching the viewport without fear. "They exist in the spaces between conventional dimensions. Normally they're dormant, uninterested in our reality. But certain frequencies, certain patterns of energy, they respond to them, like calling to a sleeping predator." "You weaponized them," Thrix accused, his tank now positioned near the viewport. "You turned them against us." Chen shook her head. "We didn't weaponize them. We invited them, and they came. The difference is important." A massive Alliance dreadnought in the distance suddenly developed a perfect spherical hole in its center, edges gleaming like polished metal. There was no explosion, no debris, just a section of reality excised with impossible precision. The ship's remaining sections drifted apart, power systems failing. "You can stop this," Carvex said. It wasn't a question, but a realization. "Yes," Chen agreed. "But why would I? Your fleet was on its way to Earth, to my home." The general turned to face her fully. "Because you understand balance, Commander. You know that mutual annihilation benefits neither of our peoples." Before Chen could respond, the deck trembled violently. Emergency systems blared warnings. "Hull breach on Deck 17, an automated voice announced. "Containment failing." "They're inside the flagship," Chen noted calmly. "Your time is running out, General." Carvex's scaled hand moved to his sidearm, but stopped short of drawing it. "What do you want, human?" "The same thing we've wanted since this war began. Recognition of our sovereignty. Withdrawal from human territories. A binding peace treaty." Admiral Thrix's tank bubbled with rage. "Preposterous. We do not negotiate with." "The alternative," Chen interrupted, "is watching your entire species learn what exists in the spaces you've traveled through so carelessly all these years." She raised an eyebrow. "Your choice. Aboard Void Platform Alpha, hidden in the shadow of a rogue planet where no sensors ever scanned, Lieutenant Commander Alexei Volkov monitored the Umbra interface. Around him, the 11 other operators sat at similar stations, their faces bathed in the eerie blue glow of neural displays. Each was connected directly to the interface, their trained minds serving as conduits between human intention and void response. "Commander Chen's signal is still active," he reported. "Alliance flagship remains intact." Dr. Samira Karim, the project's chief scientist, nodded as she studied the main display. The ethereal patterns representing void entity movements shifted and flowed like ink in water. Entities are responding precisely to control parameters. Remarkable. Unlike the sterile environments of traditional military installations, Void Platform Alpha resembled something between a temple and a laboratory. Incense burned in carefully positioned sensors, not for religious purposes, but because the specific chemical compounds helped maintain the neural state necessary for communication with the entities. Chimes sounded at regular intervals, their harmonics calibrated to strengthen the connection. "What the Alliance never understood," Dr. Karim said softly, "is that technology alone was never our strength. It's our ability to perceive patterns, to find meaning in chaos, to communicate with what should be incommunicable." She gestured to the operators. "These 12 individuals are doing what no eye or quantum system could ever achieve. They're having a conversation with the void itself." Volkov checked his chronometer. "Approaching decision point, Doctor. If the Alliance doesn't accept Commander Chen's terms, then we allow the entities greater access," she finished grimly. "I know the protocol, Lieutenant Commander. I wrote it." The main display suddenly shifted, a new pattern emerging. Volkov leaned forward, eyes widening. "They're responding. Commander Chen's transmitter shows the negotiation signal." Dr. Karim allowed herself a tight smile. "Recall sequence Alpha." Bring our guests back to the threshold, but maintain contact. Around the chamber, the operators adjusted their inputs, fingers dancing across interfaces only they could see. The patterns on the main display contracted, coalescing into more orderly formations. The Alliance has always believed strength comes from overwhelming force, Karim said, watching the entities retreat from the Alliance fleet. They never understood that true power often lies in restraint, in knowing when not to destroy what you could. On the observation deck of the inevitable dominance, Admiral Thrix watched in disbelief as the void anomalies began to recede. The impossible geometries folded in on themselves, returning to the darkness between stars. "They're leaving," he gurgled. "For now," Chen confirmed. "Consider it a gesture of good faith while you consider our terms." General Carvex hadn't taken his eyes off the human commander. "You control them." "No one controls them," she corrected. "We've simply learned to communicate with them, to make requests they sometimes honor. They're ancient, General, older than either of our civilizations. They see reality differently than we do." "Why didn't you deploy this capability earlier?" Carvex demanded. "You could have ended this war years ago." Chen's expression hardened. "Because unlike you, we understand restraint. Project Umbra was our absolute last resort. The consequences of using it." She shook her head. "Let's just say there are prices we weren't willing to pay until you forced our hand." Admiral Thrix drifted closer, his tank humming with the movement. "The Alliance Council will never agree to full withdrawal. It would be seen as capitulation." "Then frame it differently," Chen suggested. "Tell them you've discovered a fundamental force that requires study, that makes certain regions of space temporarily unsafe for Alliance vessels. Save face if you must, but end this war." The Admiral and General exchanged glances, a moment of silent communication between two beings who had never expected to face such a decision. "I will contact the Council," Thrix finally conceded, his voice subdued. "General Carvex will escort you to more appropriate quarters while we establish formal communication channels with your government." As guards led her from the observation deck, Chen paused at the doorway. "One more thing, gentlemen. The entities are curious now. They've noticed our reality in ways they hadn't before. They'll be watching. All of us, with greater interest going forward." Her smile held no warmth. "Something to consider when you draft those peace terms." 3 days later, Commander Chen stood on the bridge of the EDF transport Resilient Dawn, watching as the Alliance flagship retreated with its remaining fleet. Beside her, the holographic presence of Earth Command's Admiral Yamamoto flickered occasionally, a reminder that real-time communication across such distances remained imperfect, void entities notwithstanding. "The preliminary terms are better than we could have hoped for," Yamamoto said, his weathered face showing cautious optimism. "Full withdrawal from contested space, recognition of human sovereign territory, non-aggression pact with enforceability clauses." "They're afraid," Chen noted, "as they should be." Dr. Karim reports increased activity from the entities even after disengagement. "They're interested in us now." The Admiral's expression grew troubled. "The Pandora Protocol may be invoked. Once awakened, some things cannot be put back to sleep." Chen turned from the viewport to face her superior directly. "With respect, sir, that was always the risk. We knew the potential consequences when we activated Project Umbra." "Indeed." Yamamoto sighed. "The Alliance believes you control the entities. That misconception may be useful for now, but eventually they'll learn the truth, that we merely got their attention. By then, perhaps we'll have learned enough to truly communicate with them," Chen suggested. "Dr. Karim's team is already reporting breakthroughs in understanding their patterns." The Admiral's hologram nodded slowly. "Perhaps, or perhaps we introduced our corner of the galaxy to something it wasn't ready to meet." He straightened, military bearing reasserting itself. "Either way, Commander, your actions have secured humanity's future. For now. There will be a commendation, of course." Chen smiled wryly. "I'd settle for a long shower and some real coffee, sir." After the Admiral's hologram faded, Chen remained at the viewport, watching the stars. Somewhere between those pinpricks of light, in the darkness that wasn't merely empty space, new awareness stirred. The entities had tasted reality and found it interesting. Humanity had survived, but at what cost? They had called into the void, and the void had answered. Now it was listening, waiting, watching with senses no human instrument could detect. Chen shivered despite the bridge's regulated temperature. The war with the Alliance was ending. She suspected something else entirely had just begun.